Hell yeah. Tipper Tuesday.
My streaming destination is broken, so I guess it's not going to be on Twitch. But I don't want to stop it. So
no. Again, technology, story of our lives.
So you're going to be upset with me, Anthony, and I need you to bear with me through this. So Amanda and I went to go see Bikeriders, okay, and we took the bike, obviously, to get in the feel of things and the theme. We didn't wear our helmets because we were just too caught up in the vibe, of like the old school bike ride style. Yeah, and it was like right down the street, and we're like, fuck it, like no helmet. So I just want you I needed to confess like to you, like I'm at confessional. Like I did ride the bike with no helmet. I want you to know that. But I made it safely. I'm back and I'm alive.
That was my biggest concern. I was like, where is the story going? I was like, did he get a ticket? Did he have an accident? So like, okay, he's just admitting
nothing
guilt.
Horrific. Yeah.
Got to get it off your chest.
Right, exactly. It's been weighing on me since we got back, but it was a good day for it. It's been raining every day in Denver, so it's been a fucking task to get the bike out or take it out and not have to sit and wait for the rain to pass for me to like ride it to my destination.
Like those bikers, you pass on the interstate that are chilling under the bridge, just riding
in the breakdown lane,
doing the best you can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Totally Biased Music. It's Blake and Anthony. And listen, I want to say something before we start this. All right. I want to say something to the Tipper fans that will inevitably listen to this. And Anthony, I need you to hear it too. Okay. So just let me get my spiel out before we get into the album and everything. I just want to say this. All right. I didn't want to do this episode, and this is the reason I didn't want to do it. Okay. Over the past 3 years, there has been a litany of pretentious Tipper fans to come out of the woodwork. Like they were hiding in Where in the Woods, right? At Bonnaroo, just waiting to emerge from their shells, okay? And I get it. During the Bass Nectar divorce, half you guys went to Grizz, half you guys went to Tipper, okay? But what I don't like is this elitist air. Like, I get it, man. You're in the Facebook group. You had to sacrifice your kid to get in there. I understand that. And I respect it. And here's the thing. I've been listening to Tipper for a hot minute because my circle, Anthony, Trey, Christian, they were on this a long time ago. So I listened to the album way back then. I listened to it again now. And I have good things to say about the album. I have good things to say about Tipper. But what I don't want, the reason I didn't want to do this is because I knew if I had bad tracks, which I do, bottom tracks, I didn't want to hear in the episode notes, in the TBM Insta, you fool, you peasant. Do you not understand that Daddy, Dave, Muad'Dib, Lisan Al-Gaib, Tipper can do no wrong, and that he is perfect and your chakras aren't aligned properly and you're not listening to this the right way? So I just want to say, I'm coming from a place of love. I respect Dave and Tipper in the movement, and I've enjoyed the shows I've seen. I got good things to say about the album, but I don't want to hear any of this. Dave can do no wrong, and you're wrong for assuming that. Okay, so now that we have that laid out, let's get in to Tipper. Anthony, you picked the album, so go ahead and intro and tell us why you picked it.
Well, first I have to ask you, how does you feel better? Do you feel good?
I do. I feel a lot better now that that's
Blake's
out there. All right,
getting things off of his chest today, so I appreciate that, Blake. But I mean, but you address the trolls, you're going to get trolled. We know this. But let's go back. Let's go way back to when I want to take you on a journey real quick, because I just saw a documentary on Paramount Plus. I sent it to you. It's called When Music Got Free. And in my opinion, I've read the Napster book, and I haven't read this book that the series is based off on, but this 2-part series I think is the best portrayal of a period of time where file sharing really got its foot in the ground. With all of us pirates, I consider myself a pirate, file sharer, definitely, whatever you want to call me.
Definitely.
But I still support artists. I still purchase music. Yep. So I wanted to take you on this road. This was unintentional, but I realized that I actually own almost all the albums that we covered. So we started Fear Inoculum. Fear Inoculum was the first trip.
Very nice.
Temple of the Dog. Going down memory lane.
Yep.
Exodus. Bob Marley and the Wailers. And we can't forget this band, Old Dredge. Still coming around.
Still there.
We took a turn with Jordan, and we went and listened to The Wall, right?
Nice.
Then I started taking my detours where I took Blake to listen to L1011, right?
Yep.
Telephone Tel Aviv.
Very classic.
Right?
Go listen to that episode.
Double taiko sandwich for you. Which leads us to none other than Daddy Dave Tipper Jettison Mind Hatch. Here we are, Blake. And
Lisan Al-Gaib to the Wooks.
Now, I will say this. Dave Tipper, in all his glory, does something that I truly admire, which is he does not say a word on the mic. You know, he plays stage left. If they have to put him in front, they will, but he's got a wall of visuals that he's letting artists curate a space. So like the Tipper live show experience, we don't have enough time to go into full detail on this, but I just have to say that the experience is something that should be just that experience from you. Every show is going to be different. He has different shows, ambient shows, down tempo shows, up tempo shows, DJ shows, sunrise shows. You know, it's all over the place. So if you think you know Tipper, you don't. And I personally will say that to myself because every show is going to be a learning experience. And this album does to me what I just did to you, Blake, which took you down memory lane. Because as we go through these tracks, I'm going to give you some insight as to when we all, as far as Tipper fans at these shows, heard these tracks debuted live without knowing what the fuck they were. And I think that's like one of the coolest things that he does is that, I mean, you try to make a set list to Tipper and you're literally throwing question marks all the way down the set list because you just don't know what these tracks are. But from a musician standpoint, Dave Tipper is a freaking scientist. You know, I mean, he single-handedly generated this surround sound MP3 movement through one of his albums back in the day. So infinite respect for him. I'm super excited that we got here. I'm proud of the way we got here, Blake. I'm proud of you for getting here and you know, let it all out. I mean, it's important to be critical. And I think that like that only starts conversation. And if anyone out there is just going to shit on someone for their opinion, you can find another podcast, you know, because like this is bias. We know this, but like have the conversation, you know, talk about your feelings, you know, express yourself, you know, you don't have to see eye to eye, but like the fact that you're coming together over something as beautiful as this, it's super special. So, so let's go
and
down there.
I say it like, here's the thing. I say it from a place of love because I was a pretentious Bass Nectar fan. So I know what it's like. Right. And like looking back, I was so proud of like the time that I had spent in that scene, the music I had listened to, how early I had been to Bass Nectar shows, and like, not to say that I wasn't inviting to others, but like there was an air of superiority there, along with other people that I associated with, and that like looking back is just so cringe and like not who I want to be as a music fan, a music listener, and like I don't think I was ever over the top with it, but there was definitely times where you know I had that feeling about myself, and I think like. There have been like I've told people that not that I'm close with, but like acquaintances, like they've brought up Tipper before, and I've been like, yeah, like I'm not a huge fan of Tipper, and they look at me like I murdered their cat in front of them, and I'm like, look, man, like he's a very distinct, special sound for better or for worse, and there are going to be people that vibe with that, there are going to be people that don't, you know, and there are going to be people somewhere in between, which is kind of where I lie. But with Jettison Mind Hatch, like. I listened to it initially when it came out because 2019, that was around the time. Because, I mean, I saw him at what New Year's was that? 15, I think, in Nashville. Yeah.
Might have been 14. Yeah. One or the other.
14 or 15. And I didn't get super into him or kind of go down that pathway around that time. It wasn't until later, probably around this time, and most likely through the likes of Christian and Trey that, you know, kind of said, hey, listen to this. Or I think John Kennedy actually was coming through somebody else and told me to listen to it. So I definitely gave it a rinse. And then I believe I listened to Forward Escape first, which was 2014, and then went into Jettison Mind Hatch. And Forward Escape is also a journey in and of itself. But going back and re-listening to it, like having a very different perspective on electronic music now and kind of my opinions on that, and listening to Telephone Tel Aviv, which I think was a good intro into, you know, this type of music. It was cool to go back and listen to it and kind of take me down memory lane a little bit. And look, like you said, Dave is there is no denying his scientific brain. Like, this is science music. There's technicalities in here that you will never catch, no matter how many times you listen to it. And there's a new sound or a new experience every time you listen to a song or an album. And there's something that is to be said about that, right? And he's owed his flowers for what he has done, the way that he carries himself, the way that he has continued to keep a clean record, put out good music, host events, be a part of events, and he's cultivated a very powerful community, and he's owed his dues for that. And his music it speaks for itself. You know, like I said, it's everybody's going to have their opinion on it. It's very I would say divisive music, in a sense that, like, you're either with it or you're not, and some people may come around to it later. But I like him and I like the music. I just have never been. It's kind of like, it's a lot of how I feel about Pretty Lights now, right? Like, I love Derek and I listen to Pretty Lights, but I don't have that air of passion for that music as much anymore. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it is great music. You know? So it was enjoyable to listen to, and I'm excited to hear more about kind of your thoughts on it and to share my thoughts on it as well.
Excellent, excellent. So, like, something that I want to do before we go into top tracks and have more conversations about it is I want to express, you know, this is a 12-track album, and at least to my knowledge, and I went through, I used to record sets back in the day, like I said, pirate, but I'm sharing, right? So, like, I'd go into these sets with a recorder and catch all the banter and catch all the communication between all of us throughout these shows, and like, that is such a special thing for me, because like, I listen back to Swanee's set or the Eclipse set or in New Orleans, and it's like it teleports you directly back to that place, and it's amazing. And just the pure discovery that is happening in real time, surrounded by so many people, it is a hard feeling to shake, and it's something that you'll likely never forget. So, like, with this being a 12-track album, I just want to break down 4 different shows, and this was within 2017 and 2018, where I believe these tracks were debuted. So don't take it for exact, but have an idea that starting in Swanee 2017, you have this Journey set that opens up with Sayonara for the first time. And it's like such a cool experience because the screen is dark and visuals slowly just start pulsating out as the track starts. And it's just such a ingrained memory that I have. Exit Chapel Perilous was in that set too. And then there was a ambient set that featured Fallow, Shelled, and I guess it's called Oi Oi Spit. How would you go for that?
Yeah, Oi Oi Spit for sure.
Oi Oi, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Eclipse that fall in Missouri opened with Fallow, with a female who was dancing, or actually she was swinging from a ring above the stage and just kind of levitate. It's an amazing experience, you know. New Orleans the next January. So this is all within probably 6 to 10 months, still a year or two before this album ever comes out. New Orleans, he drops Vection, Viscous, Sarah, and Tethers. And that's just, I'll talk about that later. And then Brooklyn the following fall, Permatemp gets played. So, like, you got 10 tracks out of 12 that are being experienced live in real time, where you're not going to know what the name of the song is for another couple years. So it's like, again, such an interesting way to debut music, unknowingly on people's heads, and you get just visceral reactions from everyone. That is just like, again, another staple of Tipper sets is hearing things for the first time with people from all over, but also hearing things that you recognize from previous sets without knowing what that song is. So, like, the fun of after these sets was trying to explain to people, you know, it was that song, you know, that's just, you know, just like trying to describe it with emotions,
like, put it into words,
right? Yeah. But it's, people get it, like, it still resonates, and people understand exactly what you're saying, even though it's like impossible to put to words what you just experienced, you know. Again, the live shows of Tipper are something I think to be cherished and looked back upon, because he announced this year that he's only going to perform through 2025, and then he's going to retire. So whatever that means, if that just means retiring from live shows, or if that means, you know, retiring from putting out music in general, you know, it's been a hell of a ride. So glad we get to bring this up. So
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that, I mean, you rattled off a lot of tracks, but let's get into top tracks. I know it was probably difficult for you to pick three, but you gotta try to narrow it down at least to three, and then some honorable mentions. You know,
I'm grouping it. I got three groups. You know, my third tier, it's just two tracks, but it's Sayonara and Fallow, just because of how they were debuted, you know, opening sets with these tracks. They're very beautiful, very melodic, and very heavy. You know, like Tipper to me, like you can resonate with upbeat, fast Tipper. That's a lot of unreleased tracks that you'll hear, you know, a minute and a half live, and you know you're gonna get two drops of some fucking raunchy shit. But for me, I resonate mostly with the beautiful, heavy, slow down tempo Tipper. Like that is I call it the grinder. It's literally just like a sea of people moving it at half speed. That is just like, it moves, you know, it's very heavy.
yeah,
So Sayonara and Fallow get the third spot for me because of how they were debuted. The second spot goes to Vection and Viscous. Like those two tracks, like, are when I think of how I felt when they first came out. I can specifically remember a feeling, especially for Viscous, when the drop happens in Viscous, which is like this, I call it an electric like feeling. Like I can remember electricity literally going through my body. Now, was I on a lot of psychedelics? Yes. Was I surrounded by a bunch of people I love? Yes. Was I in New Orleans, my hometown? Yes. So actually, I think Trey, Ashton, Zach Lawrence, and I went to the Saints playoff game that day. It was either the first night at the Orpheum or the ambient night at the Orpheum, but we took LSD at the Saints game and then ended up in New Orleans all day long, going to Tipper that night. So it was just like, you can't write shit like that. It was just too perfect. So that was a hell of a weekend. And then my number one track off this album, it is like my heart track when it comes to Tipper, is Permatemp. You know, like this one really, like if I could narrow down one style of Tipper to listen to on an endless loop, it would be that, you know, and it's just ever building, ever slow, ever just like everything I could want in a Tipper track is that. So that's my my way of somewhat creating a top three, which ends up being a top five, which ends up being a top 12 in reality. But let's hear what you got.
So top songs, so I'll go 3-1 like we normally do. So number 3 for me, Sayonara. Good intro, like it is a good like introduction into the album, into like if you were to here's a question for you. If you were to show somebody who had never listened to this type of music before a Tipper album, would you pick this album or would you pick a different one?
No, I would pick this one. You know, I mean, like Surrounded is very digestible, but like I was going to bring Surrounded to you, and I may do this in the future, but Trey, wise sage Trey out there, he said, you know, Blake might get bored with that because it is it's not repetitive, but it's similar. The tracks are very similar. So I was like, then Trey mentioned Forward Escape, which Forward Escape, being the album that came out before Jettison Mind Hatch, is amazing. All his albums are amazing in my opinion, but this one is like the coup de grace of Tipper in my mind until something else comes out. But from a novice standpoint, like if you're going to be introduced to Tipper, this I think covers a lot of ground and it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think the reason I asked that is because like Sayonara to me is like, it is a good intro into Tipper, right? It's kind of light, like there's like a bubbly sound to it throughout the whole thing. Like, especially like a minute 30 into 2 minutes, you hear these like, I don't know. It's bubbles, sounds. Dude. That's all it sounds like to me. And so it's like, it is kind of like dipping your toe into the Tipper pool, you know, it kind of like eases you into it, which I think is a really like, he picked the perfect first track for this album. I don't think this track belongs anywhere else in this album. Like, I think if you put it somewhere else, it feels out of place for a different position, right? So I like partially just the song itself, but his decision of where that placement was in this album, I think is perfect. It kind of speaks to how well he knows his music, you know? And then for number 2, Vection. So I know, and I hate that it's like the first 2 tracks back to back. But Vection, like dude, you know me, like, you know how I love heavy shit, and it gets towards the end, man. He drops into some real heavy, like, you can headbang to the end of Action for sure. Not that all Tipper fans would, but like if you're gonna do it, that's the song to do it to. And like it is like it's a melodic. I don't know if melodic's the right word. It's like a enticing, entrancing sound at the beginning. It's very slow at the beginning, and it builds like very properly to this drop, and it kind of leaves you it makes you listen to the song because it leaves you wanting more. Like even the first minute, right? It's a slow build, and then he kind of adds more to it in a minute to 2 minutes, and then it just keeps this like perfect build all the way up to this just raunchy, weird fucking machine drop, like, but in a cool way. Like I know the common like joke that people that don't listen to electronic music is like it sounds like robots fucking, but to me this sounds like robots fighting, but in a very like cool, synchronized, choreographed way, right? It's a beautiful raunchy drop. So you know I can always get with those for sure. And then number one, again, I hate to do this at the beginning, but Exit Chapel Perilous. God, what a beautiful song, man. And it's like, it's very, we throw this word around a lot in this podcast, I feel like, but it's very introspective, right? It's almost like the moment of the album where it's like, all right, I'm going to bring you down. I'm going to let you think about what's going on here. And then like, you're going to experience the rest of this. But it has like a foresty vibe to it, like late night wandering through the forest vibe to it. And I just think like I can picture it perfectly in a set, like it's positioned in a set where I would envision it in a set, right? Like not midway through, not at the beginning, but towards the end where it's like we're about to go into one last kick, right? One last hurrah, and we're going to play Exit Chapel Perilous before that. So, you know, great fucking song. Love it. And then I actually have, real quick, I actually have two honorable mentions. Permatip is one of the honorable mentions. Great vibe. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I don't need to talk anymore about Permatemp. You described it perfectly, but it's quintessential Tipper. It's a joyous song to me. It's uplifting, right? There's those high notes. There's not a lot of dark, quote unquote, dark notes in it to kind of ground you a little bit or make you feel intense. It's like uplifting. It's light. It makes me feel good. So I really like Permatemp. And then Fallow, also second honorable mention. Those two tracks back to back are like just a perfect combination towards the end of the album to kind of send you on your way going in towards the end. So had to throw those in there for honorable mention. But what were you going to say?
So with Exit Chapel Perilous, you know, like there was something interesting you were, you know, going off on as far as like being in the woods or just kind of this surrounding by nature and being influenced by things. And it's such a, like, if you were to just give someone this album, if you were to give someone the track names of this album, then there's some research to be done. Right? Because, you know, some of these words are French. Some of these words have, you know, just are not in your everyday vernacular probably. But Chapel Perilous is an interesting one. So I looked on Reddit, Reddit user Apocalypse Meow 111.
Very nice.
Yep. Broke them down by track. So you can search that up. But Chapel Perilous is an interesting one because he writes, in psychology, it's referred to as a psychological state in which an individual cannot be certain whether they have been aided or hindered by some force outside the realm of the natural world. So it is very interesting. I mean, because it's pretty spot on, you know, and I think that something that Tipper does so well, even within his live sets, is that it is so he lands it right where it should be. And like whether you have your eyes closed, back to the stage, when you hear the arc of the set start to happen, you also start to recognize closing of the set, which is just so beautiful. And Tipper does something that it you know, trying to break down these tracks is very difficult for me to put into words because I'm so used to being completely immersed by the art, you know, and like completely letting myself be absent of thought and present in like feeling. It's amazing, you know, and Tipper does this thing. I call it the golden sound. I will find some tracks over time as he starts to put out the unreleased songs that he's released or that he will eventually release, because there's just something he does, you know, whether it's, you know, chemically with the music, or it's very much an alchemical product, but something that he does with his music, it really does touch a nerve within you, within your psyche, that I think is just so special. Like I reference musical residue over time, and Tipper is the artist that coined that thought to my brain, was because you would leave a Tipper set and the music is still playing. You know, you listen to this album and it closes, it's still there, you know, it's still resonating. And I love the how you interpreted it, leaves you thinking, like it brings you to this moment of thought. So love how you had some top tracks in there. I love it.
Yeah, a handful of
some
them. I don't know what you expected. I
Yeah,
don't know what
well.
I don't know what you thought going into this. What you thought my reception was going to be of Tipper. Were you a little nervous? You can be honest.
No, man. I mean, I'm confident in the art itself. You know, like, I mean, like I said, there's music that I will put in people's hands, and I realize that it's undeniable, but I still want them to have their interpretations of it, you know? So no, I had pretty high hopes with this. We'll see when we get to ratings, but you know, in reality, like I said, just the fact that I'm able to, or you're able to take it in openly, that means the world. And I knew that was going to be the case. So like, no, I wasn't really nervous with that. I'm not nervous anymore, Blake. I took you on this path, and like I'm feeling
That's
good.
fair.
I'm
That's
feeling
fair.
good.
And I will say, like, I listened to the album a number of times. I listened to it in the car. I have a nice set of headphones at my work, so I listened to it with a nice set of headphones.
Oh yeah.
So I gave it a few rinses, and we're about to get into bottom tracks. And I listened to the bottom tracks multiple times. So I was like, do I really, like, is this really something I dislike about this particular song? So my views on those songs are standing as of right now for the time being. But yeah, so I'm assuming you don't have any. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
Of course. Okay, so, and I realize that these are all totally biased personal preferences. Okay, so first one is, I don't know how you would say this, Baleen or Baleen.
Yeah, Baleen, I think.
This song, like, there's a fucking dark energy to this song, man, that I don't like. Like, it's unnerving to me, and like, it's dark and it's chaotic, and like, and I know that I know enough about Tipper to know that it is intentional, right? It is an intentional move, and the placement is intentional, but like, going from Sayonara, Invection, and then Exit Chapel Perilous is after the song, like, those three are so good to me. And then like Baleen in the middle is just like, it's just like unnerving. Like, it just gives me the fucking creeps, man. It's dark, and then like as it gets later into the song, it gets like, I guess the quote unquote drop, if you want to call it that, is just, it gets chaotic to a point that I'm not really vibing with personally. Okay, it's just too much, and I know, like, there are times where, like, at shows, whether, first off, if I heard this song on psychedelics, I would probably run. Like, anywhere but where I would just try to get as far away from that noise as possible. But like, even there's been moments like during Bass Nectar sets when I'm like sober, where I'm like, I don't know about the direction this is headed right now, you know? And like, I feel like that's where this would take me. So I kind of had that in the back of my head listening to it. And then the second one, this is gonna upset you, but Viscous.
Wow.
Okay, hear me out about Viscous. The beginning of Viscous, it's so chef's kiss, and I wish it would have just continued on this trajectory. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, and this is the only analogy I could come up with, and this is going to upset some people, but this is what I got. It reminds me of when you're having sex with somebody that you're close with, and you guys normally match each other's freak, right? You're on the same kink level. But then there's a night where like you kind of want to take things easy, and she or he does not, and like has a little liquor in their system, and they're like, let's get weird. And you're like, I don't want to do any of that right now. I just want to, like, let's just call it missionary, just relax a little bit. And they're trying to get freaky with it. That's what, like, the start and the end of Viscous is that. It's like two very conflicting kinks at war with each other. And I'm matching the first part of Viscous, and the second part I'm like, fucking, now I'm soft, now I can't finish, like, now I'm in my head, you know.
That's it. Yeah.
And now I'm in my head. So that was my gripe with Viscous. And then the last one, like, so again, this one's probably gonna upset you too, but It's not Sahara. Sarah? Is that
Sarah.
what you? Sarah?
That's
Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like. I don't know. It's just kind of like it never. The song never feels like it catches steam to me. Like it always feels like it's like teetering on the edge of catching steam, and it just. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place, not in the sense of the musical construction of it per se, but just like, I don't know. I think I just went into it like with the start of the song and where it is in the album. I was expecting more to kind of unfold and happen, and it wasn't happening. And so to me, just kind of like, I don't know. It took me out. I think like in a different, as with all of these songs, like even the the context of them, kind of where I am in my headspace, where I go, like how I go into it, right? And I know that they have their place in like a live set and would be, you know, I'm sure he would put them in the place they need to be at, right? But
yeah,
for that song in particular, it was like I was getting blue balled, man. It's like I need, come on, give me something, dude, come on, give me something, and it wasn't ever really there for me. But it's still like all the songs are still special in their own right. It's just for me personally, like I don't know, they didn't do it for me, but not to take away from what they are.
Right. Well, I mean, Sarah, I mean, you're all the points that you make, I think, are extremely valid and true to a sense, right? I mean, you come like Sarah is like the first true ambient track of this album. And when you have the crazy shit that is Vection to Viscous, you know, you need a breather. I think that's what that is. You know, I think it is like a momentary pause. It's kind of like everyone get your bearings again because we got other places to go.
Right.
But you know, Sarah, Oi Oi Spit, Shelled, you know, they're very soft tracks, but also they're very exploratory tracks. So like, I think mentally from a listening standpoint, it's one of those tracks where you can follow different things. Viscous is definitely overwhelming, you know, and I agree that it's almost like a 2-part track in a sense. And you know, this may not please a lot of people, but the drop in Viscous, that electric kind of is not my favorite Tipper drop or sound. To me, it resonates with me because it dropped on everyone's heads unexpectedly at a moment in time. So like that is why that track resonates with me. But in all seriousness, it's not that, like, it's not one of my most pleasant Tipper tracks to play to myself, you know, like Permatemp is. Permatemp is like a cleanse for me. And then Baleen, I also agree that it is dark and
unnerving.
Unsettling. Unsettling and like a test for a lot of people in a sense where it's like, I'm capable of the most beautiful shit you've ever heard and also the most unnerving shit you may have ever experienced as well. So I don't have any qualms with it because I get all those points. But everything I think Tipper does has its place, and that whether it's a live show, you know, some of these tracks too, like the last one, Oi Oi Spit, I heard that track first in a Geodome. So Android Jones is a visual artist. If anyone hasn't heard of him, look him up. He creates these projection virtually mapped shows for people to go and lay on their backs in a Geodome and watch these projections being played on the roof of on the ceiling of the dome. And Tipper would make soundtracks to these. It's only like a 15 to 20 minute show. But again, me being who I am, I'd go in there with a recorder sitting on my chest and just fucking experience the whole thing, but have the audio to listen back to because it's one of a kind. You know, it's a curated experience by Tipper where he's not even present. And that track, the last one on the album, opens up one of the Samskara sets in 2017. So like, again, everything has its place in time, and either way you can listen to these out of context and have your own interpretation, which I think is amazing to have this kind of conversation. But also, if you were there and you can have that conversation to say, dude, remember that shit, that is equally as special.
Yeah. And just a quick shout out, like Oi Oi Spit is very much it's a perfect send off of this album. It's the perfect closer track. It's like all right, you went through the journey. It's time to decompress, and this is where we are now. You know, it really kind of comes full circle. And I will say, you know, before we get into ratings, like I would implore anybody listening to this that has not listened to Telefon Tel Aviv to go do that, who hasn't listened to the episode to go do that, because, you know, I thought about Telefon Tel Aviv a lot throughout this listen, and kind of the the conversation that we had then when we had that episode, the fact that they were able to create music similar to this, weird like this, very otherworldly at a time so early and so far before this album, is just it speaks again to their ability to make music. And so I think, if you know, if anybody's listening to this and they're looking for new things to listen, you haven't, please go listen to Telefon Tel Aviv, because that was very similar to how Anthony felt about J. Cole when I brought the J. Cole album. I felt that way about Telefon Tel Aviv. Like I was very impressed, very floored. I think I even said at one point, "This is some gourmet shit right here," because it was. And so please go listen to that. But well, before we get into ratings, like, do you have any other thoughts, any comments you want to share with the listeners? And Tipper fans, if they listen, I'm sure if you post it, you know, they'll listen. Or non-Tipper fans, anything you want to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I there's infinite things to say, right? In other words, there's no reason to stop talking about Tipper. But I would say this, you know, if you're curious, go see him. Go see him while you can. I mean, these shows, if you want to take like bass music or live production and put it in a bottle, you basically have Tipper shows. And then you throw in other visual artists who are mapping entire venues. You have crowds of people who are not going to judge you, who are free to move as you please. I mean, it is an environment that I'm consider myself extremely lucky to have been able to inhabit for a while, you know. But when you're taking sound systems and you're literally creating technology based off what people are producing, it's ingenuity at its finest. And that's what these shows are. They're showcases. You know, he's very keen on, or I should say the Tipper team is very keen on, you know, multi-day events, you know, surrounding yourselves with this community, but also showing you the diversity of music in itself. And I think that there's just an energy that is, it's untouchable. You know, I mean, Dead shows have that energy still to this day. You know, I think Tipper shows will always have that energy, whether we're able to attend them or we're able to reminisce on them. So like in reality, you know, if you're ever able to go to a show for an artist you're not aware of, or for an artist that your friends are recommending, you know, hear what they're saying, but to go in with an open mind and soak it all in, because like it can be life changing if you allow it to be, you know. But if you're surrounded by people who are judgmental, who are shitting on each other, who are having a bad time, that can totally influence your experience. So if that's you, or if you know those people, you know, try to shed some light on the experience, you know, or to be open to it, or just kind of like, you know, just be free. I think that's the message of these shows and these events that they're able to put together, is that like you can support each other, you can have an amazing time, and be free of judgment.
Very fair. And I want to say to the Tipper fans, I come from a place of love. I truly do.
They love you.
And I enjoy every Tipper experience I've had. I've enjoyed. Now I have seen almost exclusively up tempo Tipper, and I think that's, as much as Anthony's going to hate this, I think that's the lane I'm going to stay in. I think that's kind of where I thrive. Anthony and I are very that's like the perfect example of Anthony and I, right? He loves the ambient sets, and I love the up tempo sets. I think that really encapsulates our dynamic and our personality. But I have enjoyed every show that I have gone to, and you know, he is phenomenal and very intelligent and creative in his own right, and he deserves his credit. So I will always give him that. But please, next time you meet somebody and they tell you they're not a big Tipper fan, don't fucking harass them. That would be my preference on that. So let's get into ratings. I mean, we already know what yours is, but go ahead and just say it.
Yeah, for the fans. Solid 10.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna do something I don't normally do. Okay. I'm going to give an unbiased rating here. I'm not going to give a totally biased rating. I'm going to take in a myriad of factors, right? My personal experiences, my preferences, how other people view Tipper, things of that nature. And look, I will say I can step out of my opinions and look at things objectively. I used to not be so good at that. I've gotten better at it. I will give this a 9. Okay, this is a 9. Now, There are some days where I do not want to listen to Tipper. I don't want to be around Tipper. I'm not in the mood for Tipper, right? And on those days, I would probably give it a 7.5, right? But as an overall arcing look at the music itself and what he's able to do, it's a 9. The art is undeniable. And whether you like it or not, here's the thing. You can't look at Tipper and say that you have heard other people do what he does in the way that he does it, because there isn't anybody that does that. So you have to take that into account. And it is heartbreaking to me, even not as a huge fan of Tipper, to see that he only has 100,000 listeners on Spotify monthly. You know, like, he deserves more, and people need to be exposed to this. And if it's not their cup of tea, it's not their cup of tea. But I think there's a whole group of people that are lacking even any exposure to this type of music. So if you haven't had that exposure, go give it a shot. Listen to this album, please. It is very digestible, and I think it'll open your mind to just new sounds, new experiences. So 9 for me.
Chills are happening. You know, I mean, like, this is that type of exposure, that type of like experience is very hard to come by. But however you're exposed to music, I think just being open to it and giving it a shot, an unbiased shot, I think is really powerful, you know? So love it, Blake. Super happy to hear that.
Well, that was Tipper, Jettison Mind Hatch. Go give it a listen. We're gonna get into rides or dies, and I want to start first, Anthony, because I gotta tell you something about these guys, right? So Suicide Boys, there are some dollar signs in the name, which I know you love.
There's 2.
I know you love. There's 2.
Sandwiched by dollar signs.
And Christian and I are very Suicide Boys. We send each other tracks all the time, right? Okay, so here's the thing. They went on to Theo Vaughn's podcast recently, and I don't love Theo. I'm not a huge fan of him, but when he interviews musicians that he likes and he's passionate about, I think he's really good at what he does. And they're both, I don't know if you know this, so the Suicide Boys and Theo Vaughn are all New Orleans boys. They're all Louisiana boys, but Suicide Boys are I think from like right outside New Orleans. And they have had a very interesting journey, right? They're both sober now, and they talk a lot about their sobriety in that podcast, which I think is very special, and kind of what they had to go through to get to that point. And they're an independent artist, right? They don't have a record label. And so I think that the art, the reason I picked Suicide Boys, one is partially because they're your people, right? And also because like Tipper, they're very a specific sound that does not resonate with a lot of people, and they're very weird. And I enjoy their music. I understand why people may not enjoy their music, but as a duo, I think they're good people that want to do good things and have been very vocal about like their support for people coming out of, drug environments and trying to be better for themselves. And I think they're special in that regard, that in a hip hop world where that's not really talked about or shined a light on, they take their platform and use it as an opportunity to do that. So yeah, I really like it, but this is off their new album. So what did you think? I'm interested to hear your take on this.
When did this album come out?
So last week, I think.
Oh,
or maybe
wow.
It might have been like a week and a half ago.
Interesting. Okay. So like Christian, he came to visit for a wedding. It was last year, I think. And so I'm riding with him in the car, and he's like, "Yo, let me play you something." I'm like, "Christian, you know the deal. It's got to be good shit, all right?" And he plays Suicide Boys, and like, I wasn't turned off by it, but there's something about the beat. I like it. I dig it. Sonically, it sounds amazing. So like, I'm in on that part. So that part rides for me. The part that doesn't necessarily ride, it doesn't die, is just the vocals. And like, I get Bone Thugs vibes. I get Yellow Wolf vibes. And then I know it's Suicide Boys. I know how they are. So like, it's hard for me to detach that thought of like, who am I listening to right now? But did not know they were from New Orleans, which doesn't change much, but it definitely opens me up more to it. And I'm gonna watch that podcast with Theo, and just
I think you'll really like it.
Get more insight into them as artists and as humans, and that will likely just affect my perception of them moving forward. But musically, it's hit or miss for me with Suicide Boys. Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
I like the sample at the beginning. You know, that's an interesting take on it too.
Yeah,
So
I thought it was cool. And what's funny is they say in that podcast they were talking about like something in New Orleans, and he was talking about a show there, and Ruby, one of the guys, was like, "Oh, they hate us here. Like we are not loved." Like, and he was like, "We are not loved by our hometown at all," which is really sad because you can tell that they're really passionate about like Louisiana as a whole. And they were just like, yeah, they don't like us here. And then I think Scrim was like, I think it's our name. Like, I think that people see our name and they're like, nah, we don't fuck with these guys.
I was just about to say that. You know, it's like you really make a stance by calling yourself that, and with the dollar signs. You know, like so people like me see dollar signs and we're like, eh, and then like, other people see suicide and they're like, what? You know?
Yeah.
But so that, I mean, that's probably very accurate. You know, but they're probably going to stick with it. I'd be interested to know the backstory behind that name.
Yeah. So, intro your track. This was an interesting one for you. I was a little taken aback.
I was, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, you know, I was like, I could bring country to this podcast whenever. So I was going down memory lane and pulled up Sweet Southern Comfort by Buddy Jewell, and like, it's a quintessential country track. You know, I mean, you and I both have literally experienced everything that's being sung about in this track. And it still feels good listening to it to this day. You know, like I can remember hearing this track, it's 2000 something, and just riding windows down, just looking at the golden sunset, you know, happening. And that's this song to me. Yeah, I got to show my countryside every now and then. But this, like I said, this one will forever hold a place in my heart because we lived, you know, this track.
Yeah, so. No, it is. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is like it's perfect for summer. Absolutely. It's a great country track, and it just took me back that you sent it, but I got to remember like our roots are very similar, you know, down south, baby. We hear it, we live it, we experience it. So it's a hard ride for me. Like I threw it on the Fire Ass Country playlist.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to be in the rotation, and it's always good to get another country track under the belt, you know.
I'll drop a few here and there. You know, like I said, there's gems we got packed from old times that again still resonate today. So glad. Had you heard this song before in the past?
No, I had not. Wow, no, it was new to me. Yeah,
it was a big one.
And that's kind of how I experience country, is like people either add stuff to the playlist or send me songs or whatever, and like it's a new vibe for me, and I listen to it for the first time and I either like it or I don't, you know. And this one definitely rides.
Fun fact on this track too, Clint Black, who is another well-known country artist, you know, he's much older, and like I would say like golden age of country, versus this country is more modern, and then you have new country, which is more like dubstep country in a sense, right? But but anyway, Clint Black plays harmonica and does vocals on that track too, so pretty powerful you know, duo there.
Yeah, for sure. So. All right, so movie of the week was Dunkirk, and rewatched it last night, so it's fresh off the mind. And you know what? Had to whip out the hard copy. Shout out hard copies. Yeah. Glad I still have them, but we had to whip out the hard copy because we had to pay for it on Amazon. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I own this movie. So
there you go.
Gave it a watch, and I will say, like, Dunkirk, I'm not a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I've been very vocal about that. Dunkirk is in my top 5 movies of all time. It's my favorite war movie of all time. Wow. I love it. I love the construction of it. The sounds in this movie are crazy. It's so the score and the things that are happening is so anxiety inducing in such like a great way. And it's just like, it really, like last night I looked at the man and I was like, war is fucking horrific. Like it really shows you how horrific that environment was for them at that time. And there's a lot of scenes that stuck with me. But what did you think? This is your first watch, right?
Yeah, so I thought I had seen this movie before, but I got it confused with other war movies, I think like 1917. And there was another one that I always get these confused with. What's the paramedic movie?
Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, see, I those three are in my brain all intertwined, but this experience definitely set it apart now, because like I would love for this movie to get redistributed out in IMAX, just so I can hear it at full blast. You know, like it's unfortunate that I live with a house full of dogs, and I can't necessarily play machine guns blasting at the volume I would prefer. I mean, I played it loud, don't get me wrong, but like I want it to be physical, you know, so like
Right.
I need it to be redistributed so that way I can go have that experience. But like when you open a movie with the sound of paper falling in the wind, like this just it just sets the tone for what you're about to experience, you know. um so the sound design in this movie is incredible, and I got that even listening to it at a more moderate volume. But you mentioned the construction, you know, you mentioned to me, I don't know if it was on or off podcast, about something to do with time in this movie. And you know, there's a couple title pages talking about land, sea, and air, and an hour and a day and a week. Is that correct?
Yeah. So land is a week, sea is a day, and air is an hour.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and then the breakdown of how these things are shot, and you're kind of, I was piecing it together in real time, and then looked back to read those title cards again because it happened quick, you know. And
Right.
but I had an idea as I was starting to piece things together that I was like, all right, Tom Hardy's been in the air, but he hasn't been in the air for that long, you know, as long as these guys have been on the boat. So it's a beautiful way to tell a story. I think Christopher Nolan is a very interesting storyteller, you know, whether it's you know, Memento. I said on a post podcast, I think I might have said Memento was a David Fincher film, but I believe it's now I'm double guessing myself.
No, it's
Let
a
me see
Nolan
real
movie.
quick,
It's
because
a
I think
Nolan.
Memento might have been, yeah, it's the first one, I believe, and that is such a crazy way to tell a story. Have you ever seen that? Because I'm about to
Yeah.
put it
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
list. Okay, good. Because that one, viewers, if you haven't seen it, it's a mystery that you're trying to solve in real time too. So again, he's a very interesting storyteller, very beautifully shot, um, and powerfully emotional. You know, so I
Yeah.
mean, you check all those boxes, and you got a masterwork of a film, and
Yeah.
masterwork of a war film, I'd say too.
So there's two things I don't know if you noticed. So the first thing is, did you notice that I always say his name incorrectly, Killian Murphy, I think is how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
So did you notice that his character, after they find him in the water, did you notice he was the guy on the boat when they were stuck in the water, trying to
So,
when they were floating in the water trying to get on that rescue boat? He's the guy at the front saying like, you need to wait in the water.
oh
That's
wow,
his character.
is
And
he
then
also the pilot who goes down?
no. So
Okay,
he gets sunk by, he's on a ship. He gets sunk by a U-boat.
gotcha. I remember him saying that
But
now.
he also makes a comment. There's another, or there's, it's not him, but there's another moment where the timelines kind of collide, where um the where the sea and the land kind of come together, and the air, is when that white ship, that ship that they take out
Yeah,
that has the holes in it, that ship is sinking and the oil is in the water.
yeah.
So they're on the boat, and you see Harry Styles' character, and he's like, he's dead,
Mm-hmm.
like talking about the kid in the boat. But then at the same time, they go back to like the land portion, and they're still in the water. So it's like, it's kind of like where
Oh
that
shit.
story all collides. But the timeline, like that timeline of them being a week, a day, and an hour, like that moment where they all kind of collide, is just really, really cool to me. And then, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of like, I didn't, upon first watch, and I saw it in IMAX when it first came out. I actually went to go see it with my dad.
Hell yeah.
But like, it's hard to, like, you don't really understand what's happening until the end when they all kind of
Right.
come together. And I just think it's that aspect of it is super entertaining to me. Like, above all else, the score in this movie, at every moment, like the ticking that happens when there's some intense moments happening, and just the way that score works within the film and the different timelines is so entertaining and so anxiety inducing. And that scene, like the scene that I told Amanda that was when the bodies are washing up on shore, and he's like, how do you know the tide's coming back? And he's like, the bodies come back. And it's
Yeah,
just
it's
like
heavy.
dead soldiers coming back, and it just like kind of hits you as like, man, this is fucking horrific, dude.
Yeah.
But like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's, you need that in a war movie, right? It can't be all glamour and heroism. You have to acknowledge that there's atrocities that have happened here, and they're sad, you know. And I think like the story of Dunkirk, the fact that it's a true story, and like it's just such an interesting tale. And that speech at the end when they're reading Winston Churchill's speech, I think is so powerful, when he's just like, we're gonna keep fighting, like we're gonna fight in the land, we're gonna fight in the sea, we're gonna fight at home, we're gonna fight away, like it doesn't matter, we're not gonna stop. And I think that kind of drops a heavy emotional bomb on you, you know, that is like, yeah, this was a real thing that happened, and it was enduring.
Yeah, an interesting thing I read was that, you know, Christopher Nolan got the inspiration for doing this movie by, or this is on Wikipedia, so I didn't have to dig really for it, but saying that he and his wife, you know, took a boat across the English Channel and kind of almost relived the route from Dunkirk, and that kind of inspired him to want to make this movie. And that was a long that was in the mid '90s, it says, when that happened. So like he had been sitting on this movie or this idea for a long time, and again to deliver it in the way that he did, I think just speaks volumes to him, you know. And like you've mentioned a couple times that like you're not the biggest Nolan fan, but I've heard you talk about all the Batman trilogies, you know, Oppenheimer, but like, is it just Interstellar, or like what is like
it's
what is your deal?
So it's Interstellar, it's Tenet. It's like, yeah, that's another one. Here's the thing, like I think that Christopher Nolan, and I've gone on this rant before, so I don't want to take a ton of time to do it, but I think that he's overhyped as a director. I think that The Dark Knight is a good movie. I think The Dark Knight Rises and Batman Begins are okay movies. And like I think that his refusal to admit when his sound design is fucking atrocious bothers me, because there are multiple movies and multiple instances where his sound design ruins his movies. Like Tenet is the prime example of that. And like, I don't know, there's just a pretentious air to Christopher Nolan. Like people have watched Interstellar and have determined, because of their reception of Interstellar, that Christopher Nolan is the greatest director of all time. And it's like, first off, Interstellar's not that good of a movie, and also Christopher Nolan's not that great. So let's fucking dial it back a little bit.
And maybe it's safe to say, like, when Christopher Nolan hits, he fucking smashes it. Like, I mean, because Oppenheimer's sound design is fucking phenomenal, right? And editing's phenomenal. So it's like he doesn't make. I couldn't say any of his movies are bad, but maybe divisive, maybe confusing. Tenet was confusing as fuck to me when I saw it in the theaters, and I was like, how many times am I going to have to watch this to understand it? Inception's the same way, you know, like Inception takes multiple viewings and like time to sit on what you watch to really like take it as what it is, right? But I think there's a lot of ingenuity with his films, and again, you got to take chances, and I think Tenet was a massive chance that he took that maybe didn't hit with as many people as Oppenheimer did, but still, it's fucking another one on his list.
And that's another thing, like Trey texted me the other day and he was like, in hindsight, like Inception kind of spends the whole movie explaining how Inception works. And I'm like, exactly. Like, it's like, I get it, man. Like the whole dream of it, like, okay, like, stop explaining shit to me.
Well, I mean, but like some people, you need that, right? You need that confirmation of like, oh shit, it is this layer upon layer of a never ending story kind of thing, right? But it's a trip that, I mean, again, anything that I think from an art standpoint that conjures conversation between people who consume it, that is all that it has to do, you know, is to start a conversation. And I think that music does that, film does that, like paintings do that. So like it's all about just connecting people through the artwork. I think that's the coolest thing to me.
For sure. All right, well, let's get into next week. So what do you got? Or actually, you know what?
You start.
Album-wise, we're going to go in a very different direction, Anthony. Something that you would not expect from me, and it's not something... I pondered on this for a while. I was like, is this the right album to bring? But I didn't want to go hip-hop because I'm so used... We're all used to me going hip-hop. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do Back to Black by Amy Winehouse. Okay. And what we're gonna do is this is how I want to handle it. So the only version on Spotify is the deluxe version. So there's disc 1, which is the album, and disc 2, which is just a handful of demos, live stuff. There's a down tempo version in there. So I want to review the album itself, but it's not super long. But I would also like us both to listen to the disc 2. And just kind of, we don't have to do a whole review and kind of wrap it into our top 3 and bottom 3 tracks, but I want to at least listen to it and kind of have a conversation about some of the songs on there.
Definitely.
So Back to Black by Amy Winehouse.
We can treat it like a 2-part, you know.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Let's do that. So what do you got for a movie?
All right, so kind of in that vein of, Amy Winehouse is Americana feeling to me, and you just got a bike. You mentioned you rode it without a helmet. You just saw Bikeriders, so like I'm going that route again. Something that I own is this movie Easy Rider. Have you ever
All
seen Easy
right, no, I
Rider?
have not. I
Oh,
have heard
Blake,
about it though.
this is basically you riding without a helmet right here. So
Fuck
like
yeah, it looks
Jack
just like me
Nicholson,
too.
Dennis Hopper. This movie is part of the zeitgeist of Americana. Riding bikes cross country. So like I have a really good feeling about it. But either way, something you need to see. So you're gonna see
All
it.
right, hell yeah, sounds good. Cool. Well,
Fuck yeah.
I got a split, but we'll
Okay.
figure out a time. I do want to talk about Bikeriders, so maybe we either throw it at the end of the next episode or beginning of next episode, or do an aside.
Yeah.
I'll text you. We'll figure it out. But,
Sounds good.
everybody, hope you guys enjoyed. Tipper fans,
Tipper.
hope we still have love there. And yeah, thanks for joining, Anthony. Thanks
Absolutely.
for chatting always.
All right. See ya. Peace.
All right, see ya.